They usually take things all the time. I don't want to be there until 10 o'clock.
So the town board is now taking a quick break.
Here's a resolution.
Good. Thank you.
It was in the original.
It was in the original.
I was going to say, I got the resolution right.
Yeah, you had, it was in the original, but then when they was asked us to pull it out.
So I need to bring this up during,
Yeah.
once the.
Yeah, when we
go back.
Reconvene, yep.
When we get our, go back from break.
Sure, yeah, that is a copy. Thank you.
Apologies to those watching on YouTube. The town board took a quick break. We'll be right back.
So we only need one of them to come back. Yeah, we can, then we'll have more. Here we go, we got Joe.
He's barefoot.
So as part of my application with Palmer for the historical sign, I did a 100-page.
The Joe is the camera's on.
Cameras on, like, yeah.
It's a 100-page research. The guy says, you guys should be on it.
We should.
I'm going to send you a link to my Google Drive
Okay.
to the document, so you can just pull it down.
I think we should say yes, and no, she didn't
Perfect,
defend
yeah.
her specifically.
Yeah, we should be saving all those grant things.
Yeah, I understand that, that's why I'm, and there'll be a couple
Maybe
of
very
pages, I'll send you.
Did you get this information?
What?
Next one.
Wait.
You wrote it down on something.
Yes, I did. Well, there it is. Oh.
All right.
All right, is everybody here?
Joe.
Yep. Now that we're back in session, we decided to enter this resolution into the agenda. It's a resolution to award the bid for the Municipal Building Energy Improvement Project to Halco MEPS.
I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion?
There's been plenty.
There's been plenty of discussion, okay.
Judy Drake.
Aye.
Lori Hemmings. Aye. Christine Monte.
Aye.
Joseph Wetmore.
Aye.
Ruth Groff.
Aye. Okay. First item on the work session is an update to Code 7 boards, commissions, and committees. And I remember a year ago, Mr. Kaplinka-Lair came to the board with some questions and concerns about the law as we had presented it and passed it back then. So we had promised him that we would tend to his comments and review the local law and see if we want to amend anything based on his comments. So I did give you guys all a copy of the local law so we could follow along with what his comments were.
And his comments are in the packet here somewhere.
Yep, the
right?
comments are in the packet, in the last few pages.
14A, 178.
178, 179. And I want to make it clear that we're not limiting ourselves to what Michael said, that we're just going to cover those.
Is that-
We're not limiting ourselves to what Mike said.
No, I know. So do you want to go through these? I mean, he has a lot of verbiage in here that we don't need to necessarily bore the audience with, but what was the first one? He's talking about,
I think it's the first one starts paragraphs A and B.
yeah. So he says, the idea that members of statutory and governmental bodies may not serve upon any other statutory and governmental body or upon the town board seems to defeat the purpose of liaisons between committees. And I'm not even going to read any further because the liaison is not a member of the committee, and therefore I don't feel that it's contradictory. That's my take. Does anybody else have a comment on that one?
I agree that it's a question, and I think the problem comes is people who serve as liaisons don't really realize that they're not a member of the committee. They're there to keep information flowing, not to be a full member of the committee, vote on things, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they do not have voting rights as a liaison.
Well, and I'd also point out that part of that reason exists because there are express Attorney General, Court of Appeals, and Comptroller opinions on wearing more than one hat in some of these situations.
Yeah, I feel like conflict of interest could fall in there if you're advising on
There's
one issue and the board.
one issue that came up that was highly controversial. There was a direct opinion on that exact issue from the Attorney General that was still good law. I don't understand why people got so incensed about it when I'm not saying it, it's the law of the state of New York. Go argue with the Attorney General if you want.
All right, well, I think we're in agreement on that one, is that correct?
Yes.
The next one, he's talking about paragraph E. Statutory and governmental body is prohibited from creating their own committees and subcommittees. I think it's a different, where is it now?
Is there a reason that,
Under section 77-31.
Yeah, just because when he says paragraph E doesn't mean it's the first paragraph E. There's lots of paragraph E's.
Right, so it's back on that.
what was the reasoning for that wording in our law?
We've had mission creep problems with our committees. We still have a little bit of it, in which you ask the committee to do X, and they say, wow, Y would be really interesting. Let's set up a subcommittee to start working on Y, and the subcommittee starts working on Y, and they bring a Z in as a good idea too, and suddenly we've got committees doing things that had nothing to do with what we're asking them to do. So the idea here was, if you were going to create a subcommittee to work on a project, come back to the board and talk to us about it. You know, we can create subcommittees, you know, with quick resolutions, but the idea is to not have committees creating subcommittees who are working on things that, you know, suddenly the town board discovers that, you know, we've got a new pizza shop being opened by the town because no one knew that was in the works.
My only comment on that, I mean, I agree with you totally, but my concern is if a committee decides they have a specific thing that they need to research as part of their charge from the town, do they have to wait a full month to come forward to get that done, or can we change that to say, you know, approval from-
Individuals can research anything they want to and bring it to the town. So let's say the zoning committee that we just put together. Somebody really wants to look into noise ordinances. We could create a subcommittee on that, or one person on that committee could go off and look up noise ordinances and become an expert on it and come back to the committee and say, hey, I have this, or we'd like to set up a subcommittee. I'm going to do research on noise ordinances while we're waiting, because I can do that as an individual, and then a month later I'll have a committee working with me on it. Or we can work together as individuals and do things, and when the committee's formed, we can be a part of the committee and bring our work. Individuals can still do whatever they want to. It's just a question of whether they're doing it as a formal town function or not, that we're distinguishing here. You become a formal town thing when the town says you're a formal town thing.
And I just echo what Joe said to a certain extent, not that it's critical, but creating a town entity, whether it's a committee, whether it's a CAC, whatever it is, that's quintessentially a legislative function. And the town board doesn't necessarily and has not delegated that kind of legislative authority to its committees. So there is a constitutional issue hiding in there a little bit as well, and that is if you do come across a committee that you want to imbue with authority to create its own subcommittees, you probably should put that in the charge to that particular committee and not try to create a blanket rule that says do as thou please, because mission creep, this was a regulatory provision that was put in, and I think it was originally Bronwyn's idea to like have, but
There's three of us had a committee that we were working on.
we actually, the town actually at one time had a committee on committees because the problem had gotten so far out of hand.
Who approved that committee?
Ed Levine.
I'm kidding.
Everybody knew we were working on it. It was 2 town board members and the town attorney.
And a lot of input from every department head. And
Oh, we circulated drafts around. This
5 times.
Yeah, this went around everybody a dozen times. And it still needs fixing. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we certainly.
Never will be.
I do remember it went to all the committees beforehand for their input.
And the department heads, and I know we got a lot of feedback from everybody.
Planning board, ZBA, everybody got it.
Everybody had comments.
More than once.
So as a liaison to a committee, I think I would like a better description of what this committee should be doing, what its charge is, so that this committee doesn't go off and start doing its own thing, and I just report back to you saying, this is what they're doing, because I didn't know they weren't supposed to be doing that.
Okay.
Some committees have those charges. There were drafts of charges that were created for other committees, and the resolution that approved all this charged the town board expressly with updating all the charges for the committees that hadn't done that work. We'll just say that hasn't been done yet for all committees, and you're right, it probably should be.
I have to say, a year ago, I had all these grand ideas of putting together a list of, each committee. I was going to say what resolution formed it, and have a resolution there, and any, additional amendments to that resolution of what the charge was for the committee, when they meet, how many people run, and sort of a cheat sheet for any committee as to, this is what you should be doing, and this is who should be doing it. So maybe I'll get back to that process when I have time.
I'm not sure they necessarily need the local law, but if you could provide them with a short summary that they will actually read that says.
No, I don't mean the
this-
local. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is your purpose, this is what the town is asking you to do, please address A, B, and C, or just A.
Yeah, well, the resolution forming I'm not talking about this law, I'm talking about the resolution that forms the committees. It specifically says in there, we're forming this.
What they're doing?
committee, And this is what their mission is.
Okay.
So I think that's what I was referring to, and it very specifically relates to that one committee. So,
I'm sorry, I
yeah.
don't understand.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
And-
I'm glad you asked it, though.
And I'll say, I spent a lot of time at committees saying, this is what we're supposed to do, and it has to go back to the town board before we can go to the next step.
Okay, his next comment, he says, I find paragraph K, which is over in section 720. What's that section we have here? I think that's it. Yeah. Anyway, he says, I'm simply too harsh and controlling. Quote, no member of the public or speaker shall engage in any demonstration, booing, hand clapping, or otherwise disrupt the formality of a town board meeting. And then his comment is, let's be honest, humans will be humans, and we should allow some slack for at least some clapping, and if it gets out of hand, the chair can suggest restraint or to hold any clapping until the end, or something similar. Any comments on that one?
I think he's correct in spirit, and I think that's how the meetings tend to be. If someone claps their hand for, 2 seconds in approval of something, they don't get chastised, they don't get thrown out of the meeting. But if the whole room's standing there booing, we have a rule that says this isn't allowed, we're going to change this behavior one way or another. But if there's no rule, everyone stands there booing, and it says, well, there's no rule against us taking over the meeting and, talking over it. So I think in practice, we're doing what he's describing, which is allowing people to be humans. And, we get comments from we get people saying, can you speak louder? We get people asking, can you clarify that? I don't understand what you're talking about. And I know I try to treat them as humans and say, well, that person has a legitimate question. Let's make sure they get an answer. Let's make sure that people walk away feeling like they've been heard. But keep the meeting moving forward at a reasonable pace.
If you look at the recommendations on decorum, rules of behavior for town board meetings, one, language like that is in almost every town and village hall in the entirety of the state of New York. And two, language like that is in the recommendations of the Association of Towns, the New York Conference of Mayors, and the Committee on Open Government. So this is in line with what are recommended procedures, not out of line. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure if you wanted to research how they do it in some other state, maybe you'd find something different or better.
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine.
Yeah. I think if you start adding adjectives or adverbs, trying to delineate what kind of behavior is okay, then, yeah, people interpret it to their own uses, so,
When it's a 60-page document, no one's going to read it.
yeah.
And one thing that we don't address is signs or videoing.
Video is allowed. People
As
can-
long as it doesn't disrupt the meeting, same with signs. If people want to stand back and, do the whole Dylan thing, they're allowed to. They just can't disrupt the meeting with it. I.e., if they're holding up the sign and blocking the view of the person behind them, that's problematic. But if they're just holding up a sign, which we've had happen, as long as they're not disrupting the meeting or disturbing anyone else's right to participate or observe the meeting, it's really sort of a First Amendment issue. This is a public forum, quasi-public forum. Public hearing is a true public forum.
I just realized I forgot to give Jesse, I'm sorry. I forgot to give you a copy of what we're looking at.
That's okay, I got it.
And we have had people video our meetings before, both with permission and on their own, and it's all fine.
I mean, they're being taped anyway.
You're expressly allowed to under the open meetings law, as long as you're not disruptive. You can't have a reel-to-reel machine going, not only would that drive you crazy, it would, nobody in the audience would hear anything. The microphone would eat that sound and drown everything out.
Okay, let's move on here. The next one is on paragraph L, which is fairly long, but it says it's simply unclear who sets the interviews. It's talking about vacancies upon statutory and governmental bodies. So he says it's simply unclear who sets the interview schedule and chooses the candidates. There are many may statements. The town board may, the head of the department may participate. The board in question may, and prior to appointment, the town board shall refer the name and application materials of each candidate to the applicable body that has vacancy for comment and advice as to such appointment. Who takes the lead? Who makes the final decision?
I think what he's saying makes some sense. Not to change the mays, but to say the town board will set up the process, which may include this, and may include that, and may include that, just so it's clear.
Well, I think that's what it's doing. I mean, the process for hiring a lifeguard is going to be different than the process for appointing a vacancy on the town board. So it's saying these people may participate. The implication is as the town board directs. It's giving you the flexibility. This is a guideline to how you're supposed to do it and what are the different pieces that has to be looked at. It's not a one-size-fits-all straitjacket.
Right, but what I'm saying is that this language on how committees are filled, clarifying it slightly to say, the town board will decide a process that includes this, might be language that makes it clear to the outside folks, the town board's going to decide, are all of us going to interview a candidate, or are we going to have two of us interview? We have the option to do either, which is fine, but we want to keep that flexibility because there may be some positions that are so contentious that we want to have every one of us interview the person because it makes a difference when you hear the interviews versus looking at it on paper. And there's others in which it's important, but I trust what you two say the interview was like. That's good enough for me.
And you do have that. You do have a written policy on filling vacancies.
Right, and what Mike is asking for, and I think is a reasonable ask, is just making clear that the town board's the ones making the decision of what all this chain of possibilities ends up being.
Okay.
Well, not really, because we're saying that, say it's the planning board may appoint somebody to it, and they may not.
That's not how we're doing it right now, though.
Right. But I mean, right now, we're asking them, does somebody want to participate in the interviews and move forward with it, so.
I think we usually invite the planning board to pick less than a quorum of your members, is the way I tend to put it to them.
Yeah. Well, that's what it says, may appoint less than a quorum of its members.
Right.
Who may participate in the formulation. It's really who may participate in the formulation of the questions, the interview process, and the discussion of candidates. I don't see a problem with this. I think may is okay in some of these aspects. So,
And I think for the most part, we've been trying to, we've been including two board members and, people from the.
One ZBA member, three from the planning board, things like
So I
that.
think we're trying to make sure that every aspect of this is being represented in this process.
Right.
So, I mean, but that's not spelled out there necessarily, but I think that's what we've been doing.
And this is a lot better than what it was.
Yeah.
And we put it into practice this last year, and it has seemed to work. So I don't think it's broken.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I'm not saying change the process, I'm saying that it might be clarified in the language a little bit better.
I like it.
I like what it is, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else have any opinions on this one? No? Shall we move on then? Are we gonna, do you want to, if you're not happy with it, or?
No, I'm
Majority of the
okay.
board is okay with it.
I think we're definitely doing what he's suggesting. It's a question of whether the language needs clarifying.
All right. Well, I think the majority of the board is saying it's okay. You two say, okay. So section 732,
I think that's 712. There is no 732.
and this is the document. that
Standing
was
in general committees?
Yeah, and that's what Jesse and I were talking about, it's different on.
Well, I think when E-code
Oh,
merges
they
these together, they renumber them to make them fit in
Okay.
Oh, so you're-
numerical
You
fashion.
may have a different number.
No, I wasn't provided with a copy, but I'm
I'm
familiar
sorry.
with it.
I'm sorry.
Jesse's-
sharing.
No, she's got one here I can look at.
I apologize.
Thank you, though. No, I know what it says.
So 732, standing and general committees, in paragraph B, complete control of recruitment is taken from those committees, which places an undue burden on the town board and allows no such assistance from the very group with the expertise. One-year appointments seems too narrow. How about three-year terms with cascading appointments? And thus, for a nine-person body, there would be 3 vacancies per year. As you well know, it can take a full year for a person to get up to speed about their role, duties, and sense of agency in participating.
I think there's two issues. The first issue is recruitment, which my experience over the last year or so is every time there's a vacancy, we've been like turning to everybody saying, who do you know? Who can come in? The committees do it, town staff does it,
It's on the website.
Yeah, it's on the website. You know, I reach out to people and say, hey, these are the committees that we got vacancies on. Who wants to be on it? I think the problem is more getting people than, you know, taking that away. I don't think the committees have lost the right to recruit. That's how we've gotten all our planning board members, is other planning board members recruiting people and saying, hey, do you want to be on the planning board?
The standing and general committees is not the planning, CBA, CEC, or the Board of Ethics. They're mostly internal committees, which are staffed by town employees or board members. So I don't know, a 3-year term, I mean, I should, sorry.
No, absolutely. You should comment.
I just think in the code, it says that these committees are the town code, capital planning, water and sewer, drainage district, stormwater planning, personnel and operations, and most of those committees are, for lack of better, internal kind of committees, so, that we should probably review each year.
Well, especially given, you know, turnover of board members and things.
Right.
Yeah, I think this type of comment has more weight if you have routinely not appointed people who wanted to stay on, but this town has reappointed people for as long as 40 years on some of these committees, as we just celebrated at the end of last year. So I get the point, but I don't think it applies to this type of committee, and I don't think the town has that problem. I can also tell you that if you're trying to recruit someone, you tell them, well, it's just a year commitment, see if you like it. That's a much easier sell than, oh, well, you're on for 7 years. That,
And that's how we've got most of the people on the planning board, too.
get them in as alternates, yeah. So there was a deliberate reason why some of these timeframes were chosen. There's not a limit on reappointment. But first thing you got to do is get someone that's going to say yes. And we've had a lot of people over the years say absolutely not to even a 3-year commitment. So that decision was deliberate, but it's, you know, this board or any future board can change it as they wish.
he says in paragraph C, I want to make sure this is the same thing. It makes no sense if, quote unquote, they are only one-year appointments to then have the town board appoint with chair, vice chair after January 1st. Since everyone needs to be reappointed, there would never be a way for a committee to have chosen their leaders. This seems like every volunteer is up in the air between December and January of the calendar year. I'm not sure.
This is talking about the chair, and this is one that we have to deal with because right now, all of our committees state that the staff person has to be the chair, and that's not necessarily been working well. And so we need a different system.
The department head, you mean?
Department, no, it's the staff person who's on the committee.
But that's not.
So like the jail committee, Pat became chair because he's the staff person to that committee. Whether or not he wanted to be chair, whether or not the committee thought he would be the most effective chair.
I think the town board should decide, but if you're saying it should be the town board that decides without having it to be a department head or staff or whatever.
Right now, this says it has to be the staff person.
I don't think that's what he's referring to in this particular.
I know, but if we change how chairs are picked, we can fix what he's talking about.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's talking about the timing, though, and I've questioned that too. It's like we do it by January 1st, and yet we don't officially appoint until the middle of January for our first meeting.
Right, and the discussion that we had when this was coming together was we should let the committee pick up until the end of December, and they're going to know who's probably going to be appointed. And you don't want to appoint someone new to the committee in January and have them be the chair as well, because they don't have enough,
Right.
meat in the game yet. So the idea is, let the committee choose their, come forward who they think in December. In January, we usually go along with the committee recommendation unless there's a real reason not to. And if they haven't given us someone, we're going to choose someone.
Okay.
And it's probably not going to be one of the people who's just coming on, because you got enough catch-up.
Can you tell me where it says the staff person or the chair is the chair? Because this provision actually says standing and general committees shall select from their own members, but not from any alternates, their own chair and vice chair. And the January 1 reference is if they haven't done it,
No, you're right, Guy, that's what I was saying.
that's project and working group.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So all this is doing the same thing that happens in planning board and ZBA, and that is if they haven't advised who their chair is and we've gotten to the organizational meeting, then the town board's going to do the appointment.
Right, all right. So I'm
So
okay with
that may be a valid concern, it just doesn't affect this committee.
Yeah, no, but it does the other one. because-
Okay.
Okay, so next one is regarding paragraph G. Can a committee call for community input via a community forum or have a speaker on a topic for a community meeting related to their charge? This kind of thing is unclear regarding policy setting, but without this power, many committees would be less effective in getting information from the public and getting information out to the public, which is part of their roles. I'll have to read.
I'm not seeing how that's prohibited.
I'm not either.
The only prohibiting, I think, would be funding, if you want to send out a mailing.
Yeah, there would be budgetary restraints, and that's part of why you need the charging resolution, so they know they have to ask for a budget if they want that kind of expense.
Yeah.
But I don't see that as prohibited by what's there.
Yeah, I don't either.
In fact, lots of committees do exactly that. Call in people that they think would be helpful on a particular subject matter.
The committees I'm on, anybody who shows up kind of participates whether they're on the committee or not, because committees are less formal. That's the whole point of having a committee, is you've got a less formal forum to work through ideas and projects. And
I think some of the distinctions, it's also important, because I know we hashed through this a lot, and it took 2 or 3 iterations to sort of get it into a more readable format. But the extent to which the open meetings law and FOIL applies varies based on what that committee's doing and whether it's advisory or not. And I think that maybe there's some confusion because of the reference to the OML that they're not subject to the open meetings law. Maybe he thought or presumed, well, then they're not allowing the public. No, you can invite whoever you want, and you don't have to a committee can ask the public to leave if they're not subject to the open meetings law, but they can also invite people to attend if they want to.
Yeah.
It's permissive.
Yeah, it's just,
So I wasn't reading it as a triple negative. I think that decision would fall to the charge to the committee from the town board. If the town board wanted to set a rule for a particular committee because of the sensitivity of the issue or nature of what they're doing, that would be in the resolution giving that charge to the committee. You will not hold public hearings or public meetings or allow the public to attend your meetings without permission from the town board. Classic example would be an awful lot of what happens in personnel meetings, where you're talking about pay and performance.
And I'll just look at the Ag Committee when we last met. The only time that the question of who was on the committee and who wasn't was when they were voting on stuff. They'd say, all right, who's actually on the committee voting? Everybody else, whoever showed up, participated like committee members, and the only difference was who voted.
Right.
yeah. Okay. So section 733, this is project and working groups. 2 are named in paragraph H. Can't the town board create a working group mid-year? Paragraph A says that it's not okay, that this has to be advised and thought out about each January and organizational meeting. Issues come up that require expertise of some of the 11,000 town residents, which town board members may not have, and it doesn't make sense to handicap yourselves by the calendar year designation.
That's not what it says.
Yeah.
It says that there's no guarantee these groups exist from year to year and appointments will be made in January. If the town wants to create a committee in June, it can.
And we did.
You amend your organizational resolutions all the time.
Yeah, we just did. We just created a working group
I know.
last month.
I'm not sure what was read that leads to that conclusion in paragraph A and H. And paragraph H was simply documenting that there were already 2 such entities in existence. And the whole way that's structured is saying there could be more.
I think what is read is you will create committees in January. You'll appoint all the appointments in January. And yes, we'll appoint everybody to all the committees that we have in January. And when we need another committee, we'll create it.
And then the next January, we'll reappoint again. Right, I mean, but if you give meaning to the opening clause of paragraph A, then the thought that this somehow prohibits creating mid-year committees makes the opening clause of paragraph A meaningless, and I'm not sure that's how it could or should be read. But if you think it's ambiguous, you can change it.
I personally don't. Okay, now it goes on to say that the issue of removal of participants by the town board at any moment from any of these groups seems to strike at an issue in getting volunteers in the first place. Without cause means arbitrary and capricious and sets a chilling standard, I believe. Is there any avenue for a mediation, a discussion, due process, rights under the U.S. Constitution, and citizen volunteer?
Why would the town not be in charge of the people working on its own committees? Why would you have to go through a probable cause hearing if you wanted to replace someone who was not performing or difficult? They're not public officers. They're not civil servants. I mean, I understand the point, but the point presumes abuse, and that's not what the town's been doing.
I would also argue that if we're going to have a higher standard for committee members, we'd want that for all of our town staff too. Most of our town staff's at will.
Not necessarily.
But, no, well, all the folks that Pat hires for summer help, they're all
Yes.
at will.
Yes.
Why would we have a higher bar for our committee members than for our town employees? If we're gonna go that direction, I think we need to go that direction townwide. And that opens up a can of worms because the process is you've got a problem person and you have to go through a long process. And I understand what Mike's saying, because what he's saying has a lot of validity. You don't want people just getting kicked off of committees because I don't like the clothes they wear or something. But I don't think that's a problem that we're having. I think we're having the opposite problem, finding people to serve on committees and actually do the work on committees, not, I can't remember the last person we've removed from the committee.
I know there was an issue, oh, go ahead.
Other thing is, as we've been doing hiring for committees, nobody has raised this issue of the town board has the right to remove me, so I'm not going to serve. There's not anybody that I've interviewed ever done
Every municipality I represent.
So, the other, I mean, I can see his point, and at the time, it worried me that this was going to have a chilling effect, and that we are, as a town, generally having trouble staffing positions on committees. It's work to get people to, to serve, because it's hard work. But I think I'm sensitive to, and very much in agreement with the comment that Joe made, like, this board is reasonable. We would remove somebody if they were not doing their job, or they were being disruptive, or, really causing a problem, or mistreating another member of the committee, or a staff member. But we have been pretty reasonable about that. I remember there was a discussion about one person at one point.
Because of an ethics issue, yeah.
Right.
And we remove people who don't show up to meetings over and over again. We say, you're not coming, there's no point in having you on the committee.
Right.
I don't want to have to hold a long hearing to say, they haven't been to the last 6 months worth of committee meetings, let's get someone new.
Somebody who will. But I can see Mike's point about, I don't know that there's a solution to this, that a capricious board could start removing people who disagreed with them. So, and I don't know how to fix that.
I actually like the fact that we can remove somebody, and it's by a majority vote of the board. It's not like the town supervisor's making that decision. We're all coming together, and it takes 3 out of 5. So.
Okay.
Does the committee get a say in these sorts of things? So,
Are you going to be, Mikey? Are you going to be here for executive?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So, okay, all right, well, let's,
And Lori asked a good question, does the committee get a say? And I think usually it's the committee who says we have a problem.
Right.
okay, yeah.
And then raises the issue, like somebody's not showing up or somebody's behaving inappropriately.
right. So, yeah, I mean, it comes usually from the committee to the board. There's an issue, the board just doesn't arbitrarily do it, like you said. I mean, what you're saying is like, we don't do it necessarily.
Right,
It comes
we
to
don't,
the
but-
board from the committee, so.
But a different board could,
Yeah.
and we will not be here forever.
A different board can throw this out.
Right.
At
Kim,
the-
Okay.
All right, so Joe and I had one concern, and I don't remember what paragraph it is, the article is, Joe.
It's A,
Which section?
but I think it's the last one. Yeah,
Yeah, it's 5 lines down.
733A. And it says the department, any member of town staff who is on this committee is the chair automatically.
No. Well, it says if any particular project or working group is assigned to work closely with a particular town department, then the department head shall be appointed as
Right, yeah,
chairperson.
yeah.
Right. That would again come down to the charging resolution, but I would tend to agree that there's probably only one committee where that would likely be true in a charge, and that would be Park Recreation and Trail.
Mhm. And the committee actually wanted to have one of its members instead of Pat. Pat would rather have a member, but we're following the rules, so Pat's the chair.
He really doesn't have the time.
And he doesn't have the time, especially in the summer.
Be on the-
And so I think making it optional.
May.
Yeah,
So
making
then,
the chair.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Another May.
Another May, the town
In
board.
July.
Just to give some flexibility so that we don't have to change the rules to change for a particular situation.
13.
But in
It's a
agreement with that,
one-page local law. I don't even think you need me to draft it.
Well, do we need to do it before January?
No.
We can do it anytime we want to.
If there, I mean, it's like, sort of like the question on the cannabis law that came up, right? Next time you do an amendment, put it in that.
Right.
I think it was a good idea.
Okay, let's move on with this then. Our next topic is establishing a reserve funds.
Is there a paper I'm looking at as part of this?
Somebody left this in our...
Mary Ellen.
Oh,
The
okay.
late Mary Ellen.
Should we go get Mary Ellen?
I can.
This is the town reserve policy that we're looking at, or is there anything else?
I think the discussion is going to be around some of these, do we maintain them or get rid of them? And do we need to add others? What is our plan going forward for reserve funds?
Well, I've seen these reserve funds basically sit for 7 years as I review the reports over and over again. Most of them don't change. Most of them just sit there, nobody spends them, money doesn't come in and out of them. They just sit there. And so they're not being effective for whatever purpose they were set up for. And separately, we're about to start getting money from these host community agreements that's going to be for the Parks and Recreation Department. We need to set up a reserve fund to park that money into and then have a policy of how it's going to be spent coming out of it. And I see that as one that needs to be set up, and I don't have the language in front of me, but we need to set something up for that to both fund upgrades and any kind of expansion of parks, and also to hire someone to do grant writing, because I'd like to leverage that money with grants. So the grant writing financing would come out of that same fund.
So a reserve, and Guy can speak to this, I don't think we can set up a reserve for the money to do whatever we want with. I think you set up the reserve for the purpose.
Mhm.
So you take some of this host agreement money and you say, okay, we want $2,000.
Mary Ellen, I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic?
Oh, yeah. All right. So a reserve, we can't put the money in the reserve and say this reserve is for whatever we want, decide to do with it. That's fund balance. So a reserve is going to be for a purpose, right? It could be a general purpose, right? This is for parks and trails. This is for equipment. It could be specific. This is for the restrooms at the park, right? And then you put a portion of the money, we're going to put $50,000 in there, we're going to put whatever it is, whatever your limits are. But you can't, you don't form a reserve for just a pot of money for all kinds of purposes, unless it's just capital improvement or something. But we do have the building repair reserves, right, that we could use for some of the money, if you're thinking some of the money is going to be to fix the restrooms, right? You could use that. That's how we already have that reserve. Fund it at a higher level maybe, or whatever you want. You can update the reserve policy for that. We do have I gave you the copy of the reserve policy, and I gave you a copy of the resolution that formed the parklands and trailway reserves. It seems to me, reading the park and trails one, it's more for trails than parks, but I don't know if there's an interpretation in here that would also qualify it for parks. But those are two reserves we already have. Fund them with this money.
I'm thinking we might need to revise the language as to what they're for as well.
Well, especially the parks. The building repair is building repair.
I don't know if we can revise the language, or if we just drop one and create a new one.
Well, you can liquidate one, and there's only, just so you know, there's like $166 in there, so.
So to take your explanation to even finer level, as between specific reserve funds and type reserve funds, which what you refer to as general, that's the, you can't just set up a reserve for whatever you think merits a reserve.
Right.
You have to be statutorily authorized to do it, and those 20 or so statutes start at General Municipal Law Section 6, so 6A, 6B, EFG, H, I, J, K, whatever. So you'd have to make sure that you, one, have statutory authorization for the specific project or purpose of the fund, and then you have to follow the rules in that particular statute for that type of fund. And one of the biggest rules is, you know, are you required to have a public hearing? Is it required to go to public referendum?
Right.
Right? Now, most of them are permissive referendum. You just have to publish the notice. There are funds where you're not required to do much of that. You may only be required to have a public hearing, but when you go to expend from the fund, the resolution isn't effective until after the 30-day running of the referendum period. So the first step is, what exactly do you want to do? And the second step is, what statute authorizes it? Because that tells you how to build it.
Yep.
So if you're dealing with capital improvements, repair reserves, things that are clearly within the breadth of municipal authority, it's going to be authorized. You're going to find a section that'll make it work, and you may even have a choice of more than one way to do it. If you have an existing fund and you want to change its purposes, you're probably going to, you're not always, but you may run into the scenario where you're going to have to go through multiple procedures to dissolve that fund pursuant to referendum, and then to reinvest that into a new fund. So if the funds that exist have a valid purpose and reason for existing, and something that you want to do is close but different, you might be better off with a better fund rather than risking, you know, losing both funds, or maybe investing more than it might be worth it, especially if you have a fund that has $133 in it. Maybe that one you would dissolve. Or maybe you look at it and go, you know what, we probably should fund this.
Well, that's the thing I was thinking. If you look at our fund policy, there's a plan on the second page to rebuild them. So if you spend one now, theoretically, according to our policy, we are supposed to be refunding it.
Budget every year.
But we're all supposed to be spending it on things, and I've watched the highway fund sit there, and the reason it's not $150,000 is it keeps getting interest. Every time I've looked at the balance sheet, it said there's 150, you know.
We're using the equipment fund reserves. Yeah, we use them to buy equipment.
I've never seen them change.
Well, some of the equipment that we're reserved for isn't even here yet. Right? We order the truck and we wait 2 years to get it. So, but we have used it.
Okay.
And we plan on using it. Yeah.
Okay, if they're getting used, I don't have a problem. If there's just money parked.
Well, okay, so if you're looking at the supervisor's report,
Yeah.
that's just the cash we have. If you look at if you were to look at the trial balance and that stuff, you can see we've encumbered some of it, which means it's not really there to use.
Yep, I understand that concept.
So, yeah, we are using it. We are using it. But, you know, but to your point, we haven't always. But I think, you know, the purpose of the reserves is good. You know, it's a good.
I'm not against it, I just want to either be using them or get rid of them.
And funding them.
And funding them, you know, using them the way they're supposed to be used, or
Yeah.
getting rid of them, but not having just money sitting there parked, which is what seems to happen most of the time with these reserves. The park one did get spent down. It had a specific purpose, and it got spent for that, and that worked. Except there's $100.
Well, except that we didn't,
We never refunded it.
right, because you still have trails you're doing, right? or
The
want to
technology
do.
reserve fund, I don't think we've ever spent money out of that.
Well, we'll be spending
We're
some of
about
that
to,
on the
on .gov,
Yeah.
which I have a question about with that, but that's for another time.
Yeah, I want to see these things getting used. If they're just parked money that sits there for, 10
Yeah.
years, that's not working for me.
Yeah, I would say that there are reasons why you would want some of the money staying there, because if you have a 25-year roof, you may be funding it for 25 years, and then in 25 years, you're going to do the roof.
Yeah, I understand that.
So,
But I'm looking at the technology fund, which, now you're going to spend it, but until this point, I've never seen anything come out of that fund.
it hadn't been budgeted for. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not, that's budgeting.
But that's
Yeah.
what they're there for. They're for those unforeseen circumstances that
Right.
might happen every
Yeah.
Right, but what we've been doing is just taking that out of fund balance instead of using reserve funds. That's what the policy of this board's been up until now. And, yeah, we need to change something so that these either are functional reserve funds or they go away because they're not functional.
I agree, but I would argue that we are starting to do that.
I like that we're actually using them, because reserve funds are a valuable tool, but only if they're used. And when I got on the board, they were used to park excess fund balance because the board didn't know what else to do with it. So it made all these reserve funds and filled them up.
Well, and, you know, it is the only legal way to save money. Otherwise, you're going to have more of a fund balance, and then you're going to get dinged for that, like, why are you taxing people so much if you're not spending the money, if you don't need it? So
I
there's that
understand.
side of it too, where you put in reserve and say, well, here's why. Because we know we're going to need building repairs, we know we're going to need this equipment. And this is a way to spread that out and make it less of a, hit in 1 year.
Yeah, I get that.
Which is part of what we're seeing because we haven't been funding the reserves.
So what is the action we need to take on this right now?
We needed to have a discussion, first of all, and I think we need to update our reserve policy.
Yeah, I think we address that, budget season's coming up, we can address it there, but I think part of what, if I understand what this discussion was going to be about, is the host community agreement funds. I think the first thing to do is decide what you want to do with them, and then we will decide if and when or how and how much to put into reserves.
Well, my personal, what I've been saying is we should reserve some of that money for grant writing assistance, because we need someone to write grants, and I don't think our current staff has time to take that on as an added project.
And so that's one of the things that we'll look at and see if there's an allowable reserve to do that.
And there's consultants that'll do that kind of stuff, so we can hire somebody on as a consultant to help us go through the first round or two and see how that goes.
Right, I'm not arguing the grant writing need or anything like that, just is there an allowable reserve for that kind of purpose?
Yes, I
That's
understand. There's a way of setting the money aside.
I'm not familiar with one, but I'm not familiar with all of them anyway.
And when we get a check, we might just put it as a budget line too, and there's ways of dealing with that, I understand.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we've been promising Pat, or at least I have, that we will put a substantial amount of this into the park's rebuilding, but I don't want to just spend it. I want to spend it in conjunction with grant money so that we get more power with that grant, with the host community agreement money. And so that's what I'm looking for, is to set it aside, get a grant, and use this money to match the grant and get more stuff done.
Yeah, that could be a park and trails or parks reserve or whatever, sure.
So, but it sounds like the Parks and Trails Reserve Fund is mostly for trails.
Well, and that's where I think that,
I think you can make it stretch.
that's what I was thinking.
I'd have to read the resolution itself, but.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you.
And we can
It's like-
have a trails, reserve and a parks reserve that are separate. And I think that might be better, given that the Trails Committee is doing all this work of trying to get grant money and stuff together to build trails. Maybe we should leave them with a reserve fund if they raise money to put into building trails, and have a separate one that is earmarked much more for upgrading Myers Park and the things that we've been long overdue
the
doing.
board would have to, you have to have permission to spend this reserve money. So the board would be able to say, no, sorry, trails, but no, parks, yes.
I understand that, but I'm saying.
It's not going to be up to the Trails Committee.
No, I'm saying it might be good to have a place where the Trails Committee can put money that it's raised to build trails before it actually builds them.
I don't think you can
That's-
put donate.
No, you can't put donated money, I think you'd have to,
No.
yeah, they should just, if they have their own money that they like to donate, they should keep it, and then, do that on that side of things. That has nothing, I don't think the reserves comes into play with that.
Right, I believe if a friends of, or
Yeah, friends
anyone
of.
makes a gift to a town and it's a restricted gift, that goes into a
That's-
T&A fund,
There you
not
go.
a reserve
Yeah,
fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the equivalent of whatever they took over for what was T&A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can only be be spent on that.
On that
Correct.
thing, right.
Or you
It's
have to
very
reject the
specific.
gift.
Yeah, I'm not trying to worm things in, I'm just trying to say, these are the things that I think we need to do.
Yeah, they're
And you
they're
find-
just separate from reserves,
And
that's
you
all.
figure out how it gets put in the bookkeeping, that's what your specialty is.
I would rather see the money go into this, and I think
I
Town of
agree.
Lansing Parks and Trails Reserve Fund makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
If we want a grant writer, then that's in our general fund.
That's it,
I don't
yes.
think
Just in our budget.
hiring somebody, I think that should be the money that we're actually going to spend on a capital project.
right.
Okay, well, what we can do is we get X amount of dollars, we pull some of it aside and say, we're gonna put that in a budget line to hire a grant writer.
I think that should be out of our general operating, not coming out of this pool of money of whatever it is, $500,000 or
Yes,
whatever.
because-
That should be actual money for a capital project.
Yes.
If we
Okay.
need to pay $25,000 for a grant writer, we put that in the budget if that's what we want to do.
Right.
Okay, if we can find the money in the budget, I'm for it. I just think it's important that we have a grant writer, because I don't think we can bring our staff, because I think we're not gonna get our grants if we're asking staff to add. These are big projects, I know what they take to write these grants.
Right.
And I'm not expecting staff to suddenly, take 2 more weeks to write a grant for this project, it's not gonna happen.
And I would agree with that, but I agree with Judy, that this should be coming out of our operating funds.
Right.
Because otherwise, we're going to do with this, the same thing we do with ARPA, and we're going to do a little here and a little there, and at the end of it, what do we have to show for it? Nothing. And yes, we got things, but what happens next year in the budget, when you have used these kinds of funds to fund the town, now you're going to have to raise taxes again, because you're going to have to operate still, right? You're going to, it's a cycle we want to get out of.
Yes, and that's part of why the idea is that this, single shots of money that are going to come to us, and it's going to be a limited amount, because they're going to run out of solar fields at some point. It's all about doing capital improvements, it's not about.
But-
Yes.
And I think that's, what you're talking about here now is really just, we need to sit down and make a plan for what we do with these funds when they come in. Apart and separate from reserves, I don't think that's part of the conversation. I think
Okay.
it's making a plan, just like we do a capital plan. We'll have a plan for what we're going to do with the HCA funds that we get. So that's, I don't want to.
Have a plan, but I do agree with, if the plan is to use it for capital improvement, or for parks and those kinds of things, I would really hope you put it in a reserve. So it doesn't get, oh my gosh, we went over budget here, that's okay, use some of that grant money. Or that
Exactly.
association money, or that,
Exactly.
just like we did with ARPA. So let's not do that, and let's
You've
go
heard
ahead and
before
put it in
asking for a
reserves.
plan for-
I don't ever want to hear that word again.
Yeah. Yeah,
Guys,
yeah. Okay?
So, is the board agreed that we're basically going to use, for the foreseeable future, we're going to take all of that host community agreement money and put it towards park improvements?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got board agreement on that. So let's figure out how to make that happen, please.
So I think if Guy wants to review the reserve, the resolution that formed that park trails, to see if there's room for,
I
we
think
can interpret
there's
it as
some,
buildings.
I think there's some room to use that for parks, but I don't think it's specific to parks. I'll read it more closely. because
Okay. So maybe we liquidate that or keep it the
Or
way it
keep
is
it.
and start another
Question is,
one.
yes, can it be tweaked without throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing? So
What's
that's-
I think
the easier path?
you might have to
I don't know yet.
liquidate it or keep it.
So,
And
yeah.
We all did in the past, I'm going to figure out and say, we recommend this is the path.
Okay. So, and I think when it comes to projects that we're going to spend it on is, we have a capital plan that includes a lot of those too.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
We might already have our plan set out for us once we get that capital.
We've got a master plan for the parks that we could spend $5 million on if we
Yeah, that's
had
all,
it.
and that's all in the capital.
Yep.
Good, okay, let's move on.
Which should be a working session.
We are, yeah.
The capital project.
Oh, yeah, we're going to, it's going to be in conjunction with the budget.
Okay.
We're going to put that out. I'll get it to you before the budget, so you can look at it and we'll approve along with the budget. Next one is Personnel Management Committee update, and turn to Judy for that one.
Yep, and I'm gonna send stuff around. I put stuff, hopefully you got a chance to look at some information that went out today. In the packet that went out today, thank you, Jesse, was a couple different things. One was the project that we took on, which is Town of Lansing Civil Service position listing. This was trying to figure out what positions we had listed with Tompkins County Civil Service to make sure we knew how many positions we had. That project has been done. That was already sent to you. The second project was trying to create an office staff job classification system. That's just a list of the positions that we have and putting them into a classification. It's not all, so this is separate from the Public Works group, and it does include a few positions that we think are going to be coming sooner rather than later. But this is fluid. This isn't, something that never changes. This is, as we look at new positions, this is what we would be utilizing to create a position. The second phase to that, which is what I just handed out, is our wage scale that goes with the listing of the positions for the 26 budget is what we're hoping for, so that when Mary Ellen and the department heads are putting together budgets, they have an idea of what wages we're looking at. We're recommending a 3.5% cost of living adjustment for 26 because that matches our current union contract, so that they stay in parallel with each other. So what I am handing out today, because we hopefully, my goal is that we would actually, as the town board, be adopting this in August so that it's ready to use in the budget process. So that's what the Personnel Committee has been discussing and going through. Had a couple, 2-3 meetings, I don't know how many, because I've also met with Mary Ellen and Ruth on this. So the goal of this is to set up a step system that makes sense and is usable, because the system we have right now it's broken, it's very broken. It's not being used, so the idea is to come back to one system that is clear to everybody that's using it, most importantly Mary Ellen, and if we're hiring somebody, how much are we going to hire them for, what are we advertising, and then as somebody stays for more years, when does their raise occur. This whole system, the board would be deciding on every single year, hopefully in this July or August time period, of what's the cost of living adjustment going to be to it, and say it's 3%, this whole system gets a 3% cost of living adjustment and is set as the wage scale for that year. So, so it starts with the elected officials up on top, because they're a little bit different, a little too hard to kind of put them into a step system. So in that case, we're just establishing what the wages are for the elected official, the full-time elected officials, and then moving from department heads down through. There is some procedure notes on the end of what happened, how somebody moves through the system, what happens on internal promotions, what happens on a new hire rate waiver. And these are all worked out with the department heads of what will kind of make them understand this. And then I worked with Pat on our seasonal and part-time positions and creating a wage rate for them. And then we established a returning rate. So somebody who has been a camp counselor for 3 years would have a higher rate, and then a returning rate on top of that. So they make more than brand new camp counselor. So that's a very quick. So I guess at this point, just due to the late hour, I just wanted to present that to you. Like I said, our goal is that we would be looking at this as a resolution to adopt a wage scale for 2026 at the next meeting.
I have a question. You've got this step 1 going through step 5, which is a 10-year period. What happens after 10 years?
At step 5, they stay at step 5, and there's a longevity that starts at 10 years. So if it's, whatever, classification GG is, they've been there for 11 years, they would make whatever that step 5 is, plus they get a longevity,
Okay.
which is
So-
a very normal process.
So we're continuing to increase after 10 years?
Yeah.
Because most of our staff, our long-term staff stays about 20 years. That's
Yeah.
kind of the ballpark.
Yeah, but they wouldn't go to another step, they're gonna stay on that
They
step.
stay on step 5, but they get an increase.
They
So
get a longevity stipend,
Stipend,
does
okay,
not change their hourly rate.
okay.
Other than the
Cost of living,
Cost of living.
yeah.
Cost of living will change.
Right, okay.
So they would get a 3 or whatever the
Whatever
percentage is.
whatever it is, and
Yeah,
it's been all
whether
over
they've
the
been here
place.
10 years or 15 years, somebody who's been here 10 years or 15 is going to be making the same, except for a little bit different in the longevity.
Okay.
All right.
I'll just say thank you for going to admin 1, 2, 3, 4, adopting that system, because that's been around for 15 years.
A little bit.
Yeah, it's been around for a long time, and the town's never actually gotten there, and that's been a point of friction on some of these appointments. So
Yes.
I think that's a very good thing.
And we have information aides, and they're going to be moving to administrative assistants. Mary Ellen's going to be working on that. The department heads are getting that. It's not, we're not going to lose anybody in the process. They're going to go take the test. When they take it, they're on the list. We'll appoint them. There's a little
And
process.
they also just got added today to the help.
Yeah.
I saw that as a help.
Yes. So,
I'm sorry, what, Mary Ellen, can you explain that?
Yeah, well, real briefly. So it's civil service, right, for these positions, you have to take a test. Right now, there's a program that the state is using because it's taken them so long to get new job descriptions, new testing out, that they are basically giving like a waiver to some positions, allowing them to become competitive without taking the test. Once the test is available, they have to take the test. But that's just a nice thing to get, people in the door. They don't have to wait and be probationary for years in the position because they're waiting for a test. So that's a good thing. Yep.
In order for the town to be considered a living wage employer, it would have to bring the full-time people up to 25, not seasonal. So most of the stuff down here that's below 25, that's fine. What would it take for us to step this up to be living wage certifiable?
This is pretty close.
That's what I'm saying, it's really close, and I would like to do that if we can. I think that's an important statement to make to our community, is that we're going to be a living wage employer. I'm not sure how much of this would have to be jiggered to do that.
you would have to increase your hiring rate for your AA classification up to $24.82 an hour, which may jiggle some of the other ones, but.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be a huge change.
It's not a huge change, but this right now is a big change. So I would say us becoming a living wage employer maybe is a 27 goal versus a 26. This is going to be a pretty costly factor.
Okay. If we're heading towards that, I'm good with it. I understand that it's going to take us some time to get there.
Yeah.
But I would like to get there, and I'd like us to move in that direction. And you say we are moving in that direction, it's just too big a jump to do this year.
I think so.
Okay.
And we don't, I think we only have one person in the AA class at this point. We don't have a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is I know this stuff down here doesn't really count.
Right.
It's really the stuff up here, and it's not that different.
Yeah, we're really close, but I think, in 26, we'll be negotiating the next union contract. I think that's the right time to see where we're at. So we're doing both of those at the same time.
I'm good with that.
Can we
Can
move
I
on
ask
now
one
to?
question? Is there a longevity schedule that goes along with this wage scale?
It actually, we're working on
We
it.
already have one.
Okay.
What we look at is
The dollar.
should we look at how much we're paying for longevity?
Okay,
Right.
good. So the current town policy is okay.
Is gonna stay.
It's just we want to look at the actual dollars.
Yeah.
So that's not changing, per se? Right at the
Exactly.
moment?
Not right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Judy, for your work on this.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
And Mary Ellen too.
Really excited to see this moving forward like this.
Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up that I've been talking with the Personnel Management Committee on is our health insurance. Right now, through the Health Consortium, we have an older PPO plan, and we are going to be the only one on that plan, so they are trying to decrease the number of plans they have. So we are looking at the Platinum plan. My recommendation for 26 is going to be just for the town to add it as an optional plan. We're not going to force anybody to go to it at this point. I think that's going to be kind of in the work for 27, but we need to get it adopted as one of our plans beforehand. That plan is also having some changes happening to it and stuff, so that's why, I'm working with the committee to see if we can make a recommendation to the board to at least adopt that plan and get it added for 26 with more movement in 27.
What does it mean to adopt the plan?
We have to pass a resolution telling the Health Consortium that we want to add that plan to our
Menu.
portfolio.
Right. Why would we have some plans but not all of the plans?
Because you can't. Being a small employer the way we are, you're only allowed to have one plan unless you are migrating people to a metal level plan. They want everybody to have a metal level plan to move away from the indemnity and PPOs.
Okay, that helps a lot, thank
To
you.
get off the old plan.
I'm sorry?
It is really important to get off the old plan.
It's very important to get off the old plan, and the premium increases coming down the road are going to be pretty high.
Yeah.
So it would save us money if we moved all of our staff to the Platinum plan, but it's a pretty dramatic thing, and like I said, we've got union negotiations coming up for 27, and I think it needs to be part of that.
And there's still some, figuring out what the consortium is doing for those plans too, as far as the co-pays and things that we need.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's
Thank
a
you.
lot, that's really a huge amount of work.
So, I'd like to move to go into executive session to discuss personnel.
Wait, who's first? Ruth or Lori?
I thought Ruth, I heard Ruth move it, Lori
No, I
second.
thought I had to explain first before we moved it, or do we move it first?
All right, I'm sorry.
We're
We're
moving
moving
to go into executive session
I thought
to
I had to
discuss a
explain mine.
particular history of a particular person, and then somebody else can second it, and then we go.
Okay,
So number 2.
whatever. Did it get seconded? I don't want to go to bed.
Yeah, I have Ruth as the first. Can I have a second?
Lori. This is balancing that meeting.
All in
with
favor?
45
Aye.
Opposed?
Who all staying?
All right, are we off? You got to shut us off.